Governor Aguilar, welcome. Irene, if you would like to make an introduction for us, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In conducting the work of the board and over the past meetings, time and again, it's come up, it's recognized that the Pueblo of San Ildefonso is one of the key parties affected by the lab, and I know there has been a great deal of concern and interest in the Pueblo's perspectives, and so we have asked Governor Terry Aguilar to be here today, and I would really like to express my appreciation to him for taking time out from his very busy schedule to be here with us. Governor Aguilar is in his second term as governor of the Pueblo. He was governor several years back in his younger days, but he's our second-term governor. He is a graduate of the UNM School of Law, and as a community member, I feel we are very fortunate to have him at the Pueblo. For me personally, he's been very inspiring as far as his work and all the efforts he's done to protect the resources of the Pueblo, to protect our community, and to safeguard the future for all of our children. And so I really appreciate you being here, Governor. Thank you.
Governor, we have a seat for you up here or a mic there, whichever you prefer. Yeah. Just speak and press the buttons.
We could go on to Google Maps and it'll show you exactly where Los Alamos is at. So that answers that question. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is...
We're going to get him mic'd up here.
Okay. Be okay? Good afternoon. To everyone, and with all due respect, my name is Governor Terry Aguilar. I'm from the Pueblo de San Ildefonso, and I know it's echoing, but thank you, Irene. I appreciate that, and thank you for inviting me. And I know this is the Northern New Mexico Citizens Advisory Board, and the reason I asked for the Wi-Fi and to the Google map, I really want to show everyone why San Ildefonso is an important element in this discussion. We are and I'm not going to say reservation, we are a Pueblo. Under the Pueblo Lands Act of 1923, we are considered a Pueblo under Pueblo Lands Grant. And this has been one of the issues that I did when I was in law school, is determining why San Ildefonso was important to Los Alamos. In 1865, when they are starting to determine, after the United States accepted the Guadalupe Hidalgo, they determined that all the Pueblos were, in some sense, they all received a cane from Abraham Lincoln, and that made them their sovereign entities by federal law. It's a little bit different from Pueblo religious traditions that we have. But what makes that unique is that in the state of New Mexico, we had the different Pueblos. And after U.S. v. Joseph, what that determined is that the United States, they called the Pueblos, they considered them educated. Pueblos, and I should say, not Indians, but Pueblo Indians. So we were considered Pueblos educated. That was under U.S. v. Joseph. From 1865, and don't quote me on the dates, but U.S. v. Joseph, between that time, I'm not a very good attorney yet. So, but from that point in time until U.S. v. Sandoval in 1913, when U.S. v. Sandoval came back, in the opinion, it was written that the Pueblos are no longer educated, but they're savages. And it says in there, Pueblos are savages, which in some sense, that seems a bad thing. I saw your head shaking, but it wasn't. And the reason I say that is because we were considered under the auspices, when they determined that we were savages and uneducated, the federal government was able to put us under their care. And that made it a huge difference, because what that changed the whole aspect of how the state of New Mexico looked at Pueblo Indians. Because between that period when you were educated, we lost the majority of our land. Because at that point, someone could go in and say, here, sign off on it, because you're educated, you knew what you were doing. And under U.S. v. Sandoval, the Pueblos had a new, different title. They came under the auspices of the federal government under U.S. v. Sandoval. And I say this, and I want to bring this up, is because under that, the state of New Mexico and the United States government had to figure out, well, what are we going to do? Because we signed all this land, they had to clear all the title up. So they passed the Pueblo Lands Act of 1923. And in that, the Pueblo cleared all its title within the exterior boundaries of a lot of non-Indians that are scattered within the exterior boundaries of Pueblo. They paid off the Pueblo. They gave the Pueblo money for that. We used that money in the early 1900s to purchase the Ramon V. Hill grant, which is currently in Los Alamos. So we purchased the area next to what is called Ashley Pond. Our land went all the way up there. We gave the U.S. government, we took our money from that, and we gave it to the U.S. government and said, we're going to buy the Ramon V. Hill grant. 10 years later, the war came. The U.S. government, because that piece of land was considered trust, we gave it to the government and said, we trust you to do what you want with the land. They said, we're going to take that trust, and we said, we know what's best. And that's when they took the land and they built the U.S. Department of War, said, this is our land. That is our connection with Los Alamos National Laboratory, Department of Energy. As you can see in the map here, that's when you're looking at everything that's in there. And I think it's important to talk about that trust, also that history, because that is really the connection that we had with Los Alamos National Laboratory, which came a little bit later, but with Department of Energy. We have a symbiotic relationship with Department of Energy. I see Pete Majori on a regular basis. I wouldn't call him my brother because then he would say he'd disown me right off the bat, but we have a very close relationship with Department of Energy, and you can see why. Our lands adjoin Los Alamos and adjoin Department of Energy. If you click that up a little bit, even a little bit more, go a little bit down. Go push it up that way, yeah. You go this way go up a little bit and then go that way. No, bring it down the other way. The other way, yeah. Keep on going that way. Now go to your right. Bring it this way. And bring it down a little bit. You can see everything in the light edge. That is the Pueblo of San Ildefonso. The green is what we would consider Los Alamos County, but our lands abut. You can see right there, you can see the light in the dark gray. That is Department of Energy land. What's important is you can see, I think it's Pajarito Road right there, is TA 54. TA 50, yep. And TA 54, you can, without disclosing any secrets, that's how close we are to Department of Energy and Los Alamos National Laboratory. We can go hunting, and that is our land we call sacred area. But our land was further up. Again, 1923 Pueblo Lands Act. The U.S. government knew what's best for the trustee. That is where it came from. That is one of the reasons why, and I appreciate you inviting me to talk. I've been really hesitant about talking to the Citizens Advisory Board since I've come in. This is my third year as governor. It is my second term as governor, as Irene said. But the reason why is because we feel, as a Pueblo, we have a one-on-one relationship. And I think we do with Department of Energy, with Jeff. I can't say his last name, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But that's what makes us unique. We are very unique, even between us and the state of New Mexico with Department of Energy. And so my presentation today is about the history, and I hope that was helpful in why we have that unique relationship. But also, anything that does happen, if you take a look at gravity, we're just following gravity down below. We have the canyons that flow from Los Alamos National Laboratory, Department of Energy, they flow into our land. Anything that affects DOE, affects land, is going to affect us. Whether it's economic development, whether it's fire, whether it's water, contamination, anything. We are the next entity besides Los Alamos County. Los Alamos City the County of Los Alamos, City of Los Alamos, as well as White Rock. We are right there with them. And you can see the unique relationship that we have, and I think that what's important is even the traffic that comes up affects us. And one of the things that I wanted to present today, and I'm not too sure what was my agenda about, but I really wanted to explain why my hesitancy of coming and talking with New Mexico CAB. This year we signed with the Department of Energy what's called a Memorandum of Agreement. To this day, I don't think that the Department of Energy understands what it signed until yesterday, and they laugh because I met with Mike Gardapi yesterday, and he was astounded at what they signed. The Memorandum of Agreement is establishing the relationship we have between DOE and Pueblo San Ildefonso. I tried to explain it to a Los Alamos rep this morning about what it is. It's an agreement between a man and a wife, how we're going to operate together. And this was done by the council, in which Irene was heavily involved in. Because what it says, it's going to say the parameters. To me, this, in some sense, nullifies the accord we have. Because it really ties between A and B, between the Pueblo and Department of Energy, how we're going to work together. And in that, we've set out protocols, how we're going to do access, how we're going to deal with inadvertent discoveries, and data. We signed it, and I appreciate Department of Energy, Kim, and everyone else that signed it, because that impacts everything we do with Department of Energy. Taxation, water, contamination, land access, everything. And if it were not for Department of Energy that were their willingness to do that, we wouldn't be talking about that right now. But I think it's a very key component because they did this after we signed it with the New Mexico Environmental Department, the state of New Mexico, as well as the same format with the Bureau of Reclamation with the Amont water settlement. And what it does is it spells out, one is why we have that relationship with Department of Energy. Two is when anything comes, if they need to come onto our land, you can see how closely we are related to them. If they need to come onto our land to do anything, there's now an access agreement. It talks about who's going to be there, why they're there, and how long they're going to be there. Because our biggest problems, as you can see, are trespass. Not necessarily from Department of Energy or Los Alamos, but from outside community. So we got to make sure we monitor. A good example I want to show you is in that area last year we've had somebody that passed away up in there that wasn't even from our Pueblo but from White Rock on our land. So those are things that we're having to deal with, but we can't monitor it on a regular basis. But now we have a relationship with DOE that we can communicate. The fire is a clear example. I was lieutenant governor back in, how long, Cerro Grande, 14, 15 years ago? When the Cerro Grande fire came about, when it was started, and I won't say by who, but it was started up there by Dome Mesa, and it started to move along. As soon as it jumped the ski basin, the first phone call that we got was from the Department of Energy and said, you know what, this is going to impact. It impacted our land, it impacts your land, you need to get back here. And the former governor, Perry Martinez, we were in Albuquerque and we took off and we came up. But it was that relationship that we had with the Department of Energy and our Pueblo that we were able to say, this is what's happening. They brought us in and said, this is how it's going to impact. Because then it jumped onto our lands. And we were able, not necessarily to control it, but we were able to deal with it together. Because I think that the relationship that DOE has provided us is we are their, quote unquote, husband and wife in protecting what they have also. So they know that anything that comes through, so we're able to work with us. And we shut down the roads from Totavi all the way up. But that's the kind of communication relationship we have. Anything that affects them is going to affect us. So, you know, for everyone that's in the room, that's our relationship that we have. That's why we do this. We have an environmental department that we've been working with that, you know, we've been having a relationship with over the years, in which we have a grant with Department of Energy. They provide funds to have monitoring and such, but it's beyond that. This MOU that we developed shows it's beyond that. Because anything that happens on DOE affects us. If the DOE or lab shuts down, like recession last year, no cars come up, that affects our gas station. So we're fully dependent upon the lab activities also. Whenever their activities aren't, when they're not paying us gross receipts for their activities, it's going to affect us. Sorry, Pete, but he didn't know that one. But it affects us. And I think that the larger issue is it's a relationship that we have on a business end. We also have a personal relationship in which they know that they can call us and we can try to deal with issues. But on the more serious note of it is also the contamination issue. I think it's public knowledge about the chromium. The chromium issues that are out there are in the groundwater, and right now they're coming onto our Pueblo. But we don't know that. So how do we approach this? We approach it through the MOA. And so that relationship that we have is, it's A and B. But at least by working with another entity, we can say, okay, here's a problem. We just don't jump out of it right away. But because we have this relationship, this is how we're taking the steps. And working with the Secretary of Environment, Ryan Flynn, we are working to work with DOE to develop a well. And then they'll determine, the next step is once they develop a well on our Pueblo, we'll determine if there's contamination in our well. We're going to take it step by step. Because ultimately, what affects us affects everyone else beyond that one. And I think that's what was key. And how we go about that was very, very important. We took it very, very slow, and we took it in a process which we're able to explain also to our congressional delegation, who's also very concerned about this. In fact, they contacted me this week. Josh Sanchez said, where are you at with this? And Josh, this is where we're at with that. So this is what we're talking about. When Senator Udall says, where are you at? This is how we've been developing that relationship. Because we get questioned about that too, because the concerned citizens, everything that comes down flows down, but it flows down through our Pueblo. And you can see how we have that impact. The big concern is the Rio Grande and how that's looked at. And so we're making sure that, one, our people know what's going on. And our environmental director, Raymond Martinez, is a tribal member. And so what my intent when appointing him to the director of environment was, he's going to be there forever. He knows how this is going to affect the environment. And now he's learning. And it's good because at least I know that in 5 years after I'm gone, we're going to have an environment director that, one, has learned how to, work with Department of Energy, and then how to work with Los Alamos National Laboratory. This MOU sets out that relationship, again, with us and DOE. LANO is only a contractor for DOE. In my sense, I explain it, they're the kids of DOE. And so whatever whatever LANO does, DOE is responsible. So if Jeff comes out there, let's say we use an example, Jeff comes onto our Pueblo land, goes and trashes it up, has a barbecue and just trashes our piece of land. He's a DOE contractor. He may have made that issue, but our relationship is with DOE. We're holding DOE liable to this. That's how we determined that. That's how we're able to control our resources in working with DOE. Again, it wouldn't happen now, but we're trying to explain that now to the contractor, which is LANO. That's what we're working on, so Mike. And I think it's great that we were able to work with Mike yesterday, so we're doing that next week also. But I'm sure a lot more people want to have questions. Mr. Valdez, I'm assuming you're now the new chair?
I'm Governor, actually the outgoing chair.
Okay. I just stepped in, but I am, that's really quickly my presentation on what the relationship. I think that's probably a lot more information that some people probably didn't know or wanted to know, but that is in a nutshell, because what we did was, when I first was governor 14 years ago, we were just starting with our environmental department, and that was a brand new one. That's when the Accords came out. And now that the Accords and the cooperative agreement started was a working relationship. We've evolved. We've worked one more step beyond that, and now we have that pure relationship, and it really shows. But for the community of northern New Mexico, that is why we're involved in this. And our interests are to protect our community and everything in our community I think more importantly, if we protect our community, our issues are to try to protect those outside of it. So I just want to make sure that the community understands that our goal is to do that, and we're trying to make sure that we hope that what we're doing also flows on out. So that's our goal. So with that, I'm not too sure who the new chair is. I don't know who the new chair is. Oh,
That would be.
he didn't raise his hand very high. So, but again, Mr. Doug, or okay, so I just see Doug. But with that one, I appreciate, unless there's questions, that's my intent of presenting this afternoon and working. Mr. Valdez?
Governor, I have just a real easy, quick question. It seems that most of the presentations that have been given us have shown the chromium plume either bordering or breaching Sanai's boundary. One, what is your understanding of where that's at? Is it on Pueblo land? And two, does Sanai have any sort of wells in place to monitor how far that contamination is on Pueblo land? And is that funded by Sanai, or is that a DOE-funded well?
There are going to be two issues in which we're dealing with this. Your question is, one is we were presented last year, May 13th of last year, that there was a plume coming down. And as you can see, the green, right at the corner edge of the green, is my understanding is where DOE was saying there was a plume coming down with, I'm sorry. You're going to have to show me how to, oh, right there. Right around this area is where the plume is coming down from Llano. Am I correct, Pete and Jeff?
Yes, North Dead Canyon. And,
about right there, right? Right about there. So in that area, what we did is we got a map that said it's coming down, and it's in the groundwater. And so the Department of Energy and Llano were taking steps to clean that up before it hit San Ildefonso. But there was a possibility, you know how attorneys are, there was a possibility that it could be hitting the Pueblo. So Department of Energy was directed by the state of New Mexico to drill a well on the Pueblo. And that's where it stopped. Because to answer your question about whether if you're going to put a well on our Pueblo, it's a whole different game, because it's not just fee simple land, it's just not Los Alamos County land, this is tribal land, this is quote unquote trust land. And again, it's between A and B, so they couldn't just put it on. And more importantly, what sort of larger issues are resources, mineral resources, underground resources. So that's why the MOA was very important, because they couldn't just come on and dig it. When you're dealing with trust land, you have to deal with right-of-ways, because you can't just do eminent domain. There were a lot of issues. So because the Department of Energy was directed by state to dig a well, that's why we went to the state of New Mexico. Before you dictate to another entity to do anything, you got to come through us. So the state worked with us on doing that. Okay, we're going to do this. So we got that first done. Then we went to DOE and said, okay, if you're directed, this is how you're going to do on that. So right now, to date, they have not done a well yet. So we have not confirmed or denied whether there's anything on there, because they can't until they do that well. And we do have wells, but they're not for the purposes of detecting chromium. And so we have that one. So that's why it's a whole different ball game now, and it's different. Meaning the years past, we were able to do a relationship, deal well. It's different now, because we live in a world of legalities, and that's where we're at right now. I'm not stepping out of bounds in that relationship where I think we're good. But
where does Sanai get its drinking water from? Is there any danger?
Not in that area, because if you can bring it out a little bit, if you don't mind, bring it out a little bit. The community of San Ildefonso is good. Yeah. Can I see that? Oh, this is. I know I got the marker here. This is where the Pueblo community is, right up in here. What we're really worried about, to be honest with you, is when it comes down through here in the Rio Grande that feeds down now the Buckman diversion. But our true concern is here, White Rock. They're our neighbors and they're our friends. And we want to make sure that we try to figure out how we can protect White Rock, because that's our intent. Because like I said, we have our friends in White Rock, and we try to make sure. I don't know if Sharon's on here, but they're concerned, and we try to make sure we protect them just as well because they're our neighbors. So that's our intent of doing that.
Awesome.
Are there any other questions,
Doug?
Mr. Chair, Governor Aguilar,
Yes.
appreciate your presentation on this item. I just wondered if can that MOA be shared with us as far as, so we understand some of the issues? Can that be shared with this board?
I'm not too sure. I know from the Pueblo standpoint, I have to go through the Pueblo, but this really depends on really if it's public record at Department of Energy.
Okay.
And I think to answer your question is, I don't think DOE has had an opportunity to explain it to its people yet, too. So I think there's going to be, they're just now looking at it, meaning that it was just signed in July 7th, I believe. And I think that because they have a responsibility for their contractor, because I don't think that they know, it's a little bit bigger than just environmental issues. That's the key. This is an MOA that's huge.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, the governor, I think, very correctly characterized that agreement. The agreement is so unique and so encompassing that we're actually putting together a training program that I think the governor spoke about, Mike Gardapi of my staff, because there's a lot of things that we need to do prior to even entering San Ildefonso land. And we need to make sure that not only all the federal staff are aware of these new requirements, but that the contractor staff is aware as also. And it's very comprehensive. It subjects us to compliance with a wide variety of tribal laws. The governor has been very helpful in allowing us to access those laws, understand those laws, and understand the significance of those laws, so that we can be true partners in the work that we do. If it's the chair or the CAB's pleasure at a future CAB meeting, we could make that document available if I just have a little bit more time to make sure that all of my staff and contractor staff know what it means, and we can certainly share some of the document and some of the details with the CAB at that time if it's the committee's pleasure.
Yeah.
That-
And Doug, to answer your question, to answer the reason why it's so unique is the first slide doesn't map, because even the contractors don't even know which land is which. So that's what we changed yesterday. It's like, you know what, put the map on there, because I think like even 99% of the people don't even know that they're going through Indian land. And I can give you a history of in the federal Indian law just in that one area that we've been dealing with.
Well, I think Pete makes a good point. If just maybe sharing with us the issues related to the environment, especially surface water and groundwater, and those issues, and any other issues that might have to do with legacy waste that could, impact the San Ildefonso Pueblo. The other second question, Governor, would be, are there surface water issues that you are of concern also? Because I think we kind of addressed the groundwater issue that was very much of concern, but we also know that surface water is a good possibility of, waste coming down on the San Ildefonso land that has been addressed to a certain extent, but I wondered if there was other issues related to that at other points on San Ildefonso Pueblo, or places on San Ildefonso Pueblo.
When you're talking about groundwater, we have the ground and surface water. One of the big areas is because our Pueblo land surrounds Los Alamos, DOE, we have issues all the way up to Wahi Canyon, because Los Alamos was not just pertaining to right up in the area where it's at. If you watched the show this week, Manhattan, you saw how important and how close that the Pueblos were in this. But you also saw how it wasn't just limited to Los Alamos. They went to Lamy and et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't just that it was here. If you're in these areas, there's a lot of history in the past. And that's what we have a lot of issues in working through the whole area. And so it's not just some areas. So we're concerned about the whole through process. Whenever it floods, example of that is last year when we had the major flood. It was actually Pete that was there. I think Jeff was out there too. There was a natural gas line that was exposed. And the big concern was, how are we going to deal with it if it Los Alamos? But the bigger concern was all those canyons just flooded in there. And so we have to be able to monitor. And that's why we had to be able to work with DOE, because they came in there and they monitored. But again, the monitoring of the environmental contaminants or issues was only a partial aspect of it, because our bigger concern was the major flood that just exposed that huge gas line. So you can see as the environmentals are key and important, but because we're just so close and whatever happens there, it affects us. And it's just, we're on, like I said, weekly I see or talk to Pete, or someone from DOE. That's how involved we are with the area up west of us.
Thank you, Governor.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Bonnie.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And you may have been hesitant, but it's wonderful to have you here. And to have San Ildefonso represented also. It's very helpful for the whole northern New Mexico community. I just wanted to, and I wanted to say I'm so glad that you guys are so close. I didn't know that. And you all working together with Pete and everybody with Pete and everyone. That's very good to hear. So this is an off the subject question just a little, but you mentioned the show Manhattan that's on. Do you feel like they've contacted you guys, and are you feeling like you're represented well in that light?
Well, that answers your question about why the hesitancy. I don't like going to presentations and I'll be quoted because it's, and that's the bigger issue. There's no TV show that's going to, show the context of how the relationship with the Pueblo. I mean, I have uncles and aunts that they haven't watched Manhattan, but we had a funeral this morning at the Pueblo, and I had to talk to my uncles, and they talked about the history of what the lab, and they remember the lab and the people that came through Oppenheimer. They used to go and go to the dances at the Pueblo. So there's no true relationship on there. In some sense, the relationship they have is subservient. It may have been, but we also have the highest cancer rate in the Pueblo. And there's a relationship between that. I mean, there's something that I do not have any older men in my Pueblo. I'm a governor and I'm under 40, so it's a little, but we don't have any more men. And there's a relationship that's on there that the cancer rate is very, very high. But again, in order for that, we had that close relationship with those individuals in Los Alamos, and we still are there. And we have the pictures when you go up to Los Alamos, you can see where they crossed, not at Ottawa, but a little bit further down, so they came through. To answer your question, no, I didn't think we were presented very well. But again, Manhattan did try to work with us, and but I didn't think it was appropriate what they were asking, so we didn't go on beyond that. So, sorry. Is there any other questions? Oh, yes, Bob.
Let's suppose that we live next to San Ildefonso, Pueblo, and we have a group of very high-level wastes that is going to cause a lot of personal rad uptake by people. Where does the Pueblo stand on saying, no, we don't want any waste next to our borders? Or where do you stand in that?
Bob, I think one of the issues that we're having to deal with right now is I think the Pueblo has always stood in the fact that it doesn't want new generation of activity on there. But at the same time, too, it's the dependency that we have upon the area of Los Alamos as well as the Department of Energy. The Pueblo has always stood on the fact that it wanted that waste off of TA 53, TA 54. It wanted it out of there. It's always done that. But at the same time, it wanted to be respected on that aspect. We do not want anything that's going to impact our community, as well as the community of Los Alamos, as well as the community of White Rock. And we've always said that. We didn't want that. But at the same time, we have a relationship right now that we know that we have to withstand that. And, you know, with everything that comes through, I think that the DART facility that happened a couple years ago, we were not supportive of that. But again, also, those are what we've always made our points in doing that. But that's a relationship in which Department of Energy, and they've come to us, and we've always stressed that. The Department of Energy, they have their mission and what they're going to do, and they come to us and they ask us. And if we don't agree with it, they let us know, and we let them know from that perspective. We just don't let the entire world know that that's our decision. So you may not hear it directly from it, but we don't feel that we have a responsibility to everyone else. We do let DOE know when we want something or we don't like this. You know, you may not see it on paper and all that, but I'm sure that directly they know where we stand, that we don't want anything that's going to harm our community on that. But just so that you're aware of on that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Mike?
What was it specifically about DART that you didn't necessarily want, or you said you weren't happy about?
It's a taking of land. When you build something new, especially in that area, one of the key aspects of our MOA is the inadvertent discovery. The community of the state of New Mexico has Bandelier out here. And if everybody sees how rich the history is at Bandelier, from Bandelier to Tsankui, all those mesas and canyons have history in them. And that is our problem. And how they're dealt with is our big problem. Because they're just not handled, you find it and you move it up. That's not the way that the Pueblos work. All Pueblos work like. And that's what we were trying to establish with Department of Energy. We've only signed this agreement 1 month, and we've already had one issue on this. And DOE already did not follow that one issue already. But it's good, at least we have a relationship, like throwing feet under the bus on that one. But that is how sensitive we are, because DART was a new facility, and it was in the area where Tsirigi and Nakamu and all those what we considered very precious to ourselves. But any activity, just as whether it's actual contaminants or actual new activity. I don't know if many of you, I'm sure, Bob, you grew up, I grew up in the Pueblo. When I was very young, running around the hills, we used to always, on the weekends, hear explosions. I mean, we just hear it. You just hear it. And it was kind of unique, you know, but with something we grew up with. But you think about all those, and you take a look at the mesas and everything. Again, those ones, the waste may not be there, but the effects of how those ones, they affect everything else on there. And I think it's our responsibility, it's my responsibility to make sure that we protect what we currently have. You can't change the past, but you can try to protect what you have current. And I think that's my responsibility to do that and to answer that. And so, what you can only do as best you can, and that's what we try to do. And, you know, the younger people like Irene and those individuals are trying to do as best they can too. So. Any other questions? Mona, did you have a question? Nona? Oh. So with that, Doug or Carlos or Lee, if there's no other questions, I just want to really thank the CAB for allowing Irene to be on the advisory board. She came to me and she asked me if she would like. And it was tough. I really want to let you know how difficult it was for Irene to be on this advisory board because she was also on the council. And it is very, very unique. We get a lot of requests from different entities. And one entity, Concerned Citizens of New Mexico, they always try to, those are people, individuals, and I'm not sure anybody's here on that, but we have issues with them trying to trespass on our lands or other entities. And so that was my big hesitancy because it's about respect. If people would just respect what we have, we respect what they're trying to push. And if it wasn't for Irene being on the Center for and she told me, it's like, you know, this is what's going on, this is, they're just concerned. She was able to educate me. So I want to thank you for allowing Irene to educate me on what was happening here. So I really appreciate you allowing Irene to be here. But I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and I hope I was helpful. Hope I didn't hurt our relationship, Jeff or Pete. But if anything else, I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and if there's any other questions later on, just feel free to get in touch with Irene, and we can do that. But thank you again for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.